Leaving the Flinders Ranges today and heading up to Mungarani, which is on the Birdsville track. So my ultimate goal of reaching Birdsville, hopefully, will happen tomorrow. It's still pretty cold at about 4 degrees C this morning and going to warm up to about 14. I've got about 270k of sealed road to Maree and then 200 kilometres of dirt road, which is the start of the Birdsville track. The original Garn railway line went from Hawker to Maree, and this is some of the infrastructure that remains. The 270k to Maree passed easily with the cruise control set. I'm at the intersection now, but I'm going to go into Maree first and just top up with fuel just to be sure. One of the old locos remains as a reminder of the old rail line. And this is a reminder of the camel trains that the train replaced. Anyway, this is the start of the famous Birdsville track, but I'm only going as far as Mungarani tonight. It's a few hundred metres of bitumen and then it's straight on to the dirt. And the road starts out really nicely. You can zoom along here without any trouble at all. There are hundreds of gutters that cross the road, so you've got to be careful because some of them are really rough. And I can already imagine how this road gets closed at the slight chance of rain. I'm enjoying this. The riding's easy and I'm thinking, this is going to be a breeze getting up to Birdsville. The road's quite corrugated in places, but if you keep the speed up, the suspension on the Africa Twin just glides over it. I'm so impressed at how comfortable this bike is. My confidence of an easy ride is starting to suffer because the more I travel north, the wetter the road seems to be. But so far so good. There's a dryish line around the wet patches. It's getting wetter. Fortunately, there are still long, dry sections. The road's designated as open to four-wheel drives only, and I can see why now. Some of these patches are a bit slippery and deep. And the joy is you just don't know how deep until you're in it. And no, I'm not going to stop and walk through every puddle that I come across. Otherwise I would never make it to my destination. There are just too many puddles. Why don't I just ride right round these? Go bush, you might ask. Well, that would be a recipe for disaster. If you go off the road, you could be up to the axles in thick mud in no time. It looks solid, but it isn't. Even though it's sloppy on the road, the base is fairly firm, and so long as I keep up a reasonable pace, I can get through this slop without too much trouble. But it is a concern. There's always that lingering worry in the back of my mind. What if I drop it out here? There's the odd car or two, so maybe I won't die. The 200k passed reasonably quickly, but I'm muddy and I've got soaking wet boots. And just to top it off, there's one last one just before Mungarani itself. Mungarani is the only fuel stop between Mari and Birdsville, and fortunately they have some 91 unleaded here. And they've also got the famous old trucks that Tom Cruise drove between Mari to supply Birdsville. The service he provided also replaced the camel trains. So now Australia's got thousands of wild camels that were just let loose once they were no use anymore. $3.10 a litre for 91 here, but I actually don't begrudge it. This place is in the middle of BF nowhere, and they supply an excellent service. Fast internet, accommodation, great food, and of course beer. It's next morning. My boots aren't dry, but they're not too bad. I've got clean, dry socks on, so I'm feeling reasonably comfortable. Now it's the 300 kilometres between here and Birdsville. The road's not getting any drier, but I've just got to soldier on. The plan of attack for these water crossings is stay in the wheel tracks, keep a reasonable speed, and hope for the best. The road's deceivingly smooth between bog holes, and you can easily pick up speed without really realising it. I've got to admit my concern turned to anxiety and then started turning to fear when I saw this sort of water. This one came right up over the front wheel, and all I could imagine was the bike lying on its side completely covered in water and me wondering what I'm going to do now. But I do love it out here, so I try to concentrate on the scenery and the smooth bits of road in between. So it's worthwhile stopping now and then, soaking up a bit of the serenity. It's very green out here at the moment. This is a gibber plain, but you can't really tell because there's green grass in it at the moment. These are gibbers, and this is the gibber plain. Goes on forever. After a short break of snakes and water, it's back to battle the bog holes. Oh dear, this one's really deep. This one really had me worried. The bow wave came right up over the bike and over my hands. So I'm completely soaked from the knees down now. As I get closer to Birdsville, the dunes start to appear, just small ones, but breaks up the monotony. Wow, it really is green here. The desert is certainly blooming. I can relax now. I've made it to Birdsville. I don't mind admitting to being quite anxious along that section through all that water. Because I'm now in sunny Queensland, it's also warmer up here. It's about 20 degrees C, the perfect temperature. Crossing over the Diamantina River, Birdsville sits on the edge of that. I'm staying in a donga in the caravan park for 2 nights here because my ultimate goal is to get a photo of the bike next to Big Red. It's early next morning and I'm heading out to Big Red. I'm hoping to get there before the hordes of 4-wheel drives start crossing the Simpson Desert. I've been across the desert on a 4-wheel drive, which is a very pleasant trip, but easy. But I've got no intention of doing it on a motorcycle. The road from Birdsville out to Big Red is sealed all the way except for the last couple of kilometres. Here's my turn-off. We just parallel the dunes until we get to Big Red itself. The dunes travel roughly north-south, and the further east you get, the larger the dunes. And this one, Big Red, is at the edge of the Simpson Desert on the eastern side, and it's the last dune you cross before you get to Birdsville if you're coming from the west. The eastern side of Big Red is the easier side to negotiate, and I'm riding along and thinking, actually that track doesn't look too bad, it looks nice and hard, I think I'll just ride up it. Had no intention of doing this, of course, and you idiot. Bloody idiot. I thought I knew my limitations. I had no intention of getting this big heavy bike in the sand. But look at me now. The bike's on the side, there's no one else around, and so I've got to try to lift it up myself. Fortunately, I've got my lift tool. So let's see how we go. The bike's on more of a slope than you can tell because the camera's on the same slope. And as I jack the bike up, it just slides in the loose sand. So, attempt number 1 hasn't worked. And there's no way I'm lifting it manually. So, I dig a big hole for the back wheel to fall into. You can see how much the bike has slid down from where I originally started. Looks like slow and steady wins the race. We all know the euphoria of getting it up, and I was feeling quite good all of a sudden. Now to fill in that hole, reverse the bike down, and then take a break, and be happy that I didn't die. Now I'm safe, let's enjoy the scenery. It's been a challenging and rewarding trip, and I think this poem by Dorothy McKellar really sums up the way I feel about riding solo.
I love a sunburnt country, a land of sweeping plains, of ragged mountain ranges, of droughts and flooding rains. I love her far horizons. I love her jewel city, her beauty and her terror, the wide brown land for me.